In a cinematic turn of events that has left royal watchers breathless and the hallowed halls of the British monarchy reeling, a high-stakes drama unfolded beneath the misty peaks of the Scottish Highlands, signaling a tectonic shift in the royal hierarchy. The scene was set at the crack of dawn on a Tuesday that will forever be etched in the annals of Windsor history, as the heavy iron gates of a sprawling royal estate slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the glen. A lone black Range Rover sat idling in the circular drive, its engine a low hum against the backdrop of an awakening wilderness, as Prince William stepped out to reclaim a legacy that he believes was never meant to be bartered away. His boots crunched with a rhythmic, purposeful intensity against the Highland gravel, a sound that seemed to signal the end of one era and the defiant beginning of another. As he approached the massive oak doors, structures that have stood as silent witnesses to 3 centuries of royal triumphs and tribulations, the usual flurry of welcoming staff was nowhere to be found. The doors remained stubbornly closed, a physical manifestation of the invisible barriers that have grown between the Prince of Wales and the new Queen Consort. Behind him, his security detail exchanged tense, knowing glances, their eyes scanning the perimeter, while the prince remained focused on the task at hand. He pulled his phone from his pocket, the screen illuminating a flurry of urgent digital correspondence: 3 missed calls from Camilla's private secretary, 2 from the king's office, and 1 from the Archbishop of Canterbury. With a flick of his thumb and a jaw set in granite, he deleted them all, effectively cutting the cord to the palace machinery that had for so long dictated the terms of his family's narrative. The silence was eventually broken not by a royal equerry, but by the steady, weathered presence of Marcus, the head groundskeeper whose family had tended these lands for generations. Emerging from behind the towering stone pillars like a ghost of the estate's past, Marcus approached with a reverence that spoke of deep-seated loyalties. His hands, gnarled by years of Highland winters, shook slightly as he extended a heavy brass key toward the future king. The weight of the moment was palpable as Marcus whispered that the Queen Consort had been expecting this day to arrive, though perhaps not with such surgical precision. William took the key, noting it was still warm from the old man's palm, a small human connection in a world of cold protocols. When asked how long she had known, Marcus revealed the clock had been ticking since the previous Tuesday, the very moment the lawyers arrived with their leather-bound portfolios and their unyielding legal theories. As the massive doors finally swung open on silent, well-oiled hinges, the interior of the house revealed a space that had been meticulously transformed into a monument to Camilla's personal tastes. Summer arrangements of fresh roses, plucked from her own personal greenhouse, overflowed from every vase, their scent thick and cloying in the morning air. Portraits of her own grandchildren now lined the mantelpiece, occupying the very spaces where images of the late Princess Diana had once stood as a source of comfort for her sons. In the guest powder room, towels embroidered with her new monogram were folded with military precision, marking her territory in a house that William still associated with the soft laughter and tragic beauty of his mother. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall chimed 11, a somber reminder that time was running out for the current inhabitants of the estate. In exactly 4 hours, a convoy of vehicles was scheduled to arrive, carrying Camilla for what she anticipated would be a triumphant and leisurely summer retreat. In her mind, the Highland estate was finally hers to command, a reward for years of navigating the treacherous waters of public opinion and palace intrigue. She was, however, profoundly mistaken. As William climbed the curved staircase, his fingers trailed along the intricately carved banister, his mind racing with memories of his mother's touch on these same surfaces. At the top of the stairs, he turned left toward the master suite, finding the door left slightly ajar as if the house itself were holding its breath. Inside, the room was a chaotic sprawl of Camilla's personal effects: silk scarves in every shade of the rainbow, diamond brooches that caught the morning light, and a leather-bound appointment diary that lay open on the 4-poster bed. The diary was a roadmap of her intentions, filled with page after page of planned renovations, staff reassignments, and complete garden redesigns that would have erased the last vestiges of the estate's original character. Menu changes for the upcoming autumn shooting season were meticulously noted, suggesting a woman who believed her tenure was permanent and unquestionable. With hands that remained remarkably steady despite the emotional gravity of the situation, William reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a document that bore the previous day's date and the unmistakable shimmer of the royal seal. It was a document that represented months of clandestine legal maneuvering and the culmination of a lifelong promise. The paper held 3 distinct signatures: his father's shaky, elegant scroll, his own firm, uncompromising hand, and at the very bottom, the flowing, authoritative script of the Archbishop of Canterbury. This was the Highland Inheritance Decree, a legal instrument of immense power that had been crafted in the shadows to correct what William perceived as a historical injustice. He placed an unsigned letter directly onto Camilla's vanity mirror, ensuring that her own reflection would be the first thing she saw when she opened the envelope. The letter contained a single, devastating sentence that stripped away her perceived authority. The estate belongs to the House of Wales. Outside, the low rumble of car engines began to vibrate through the Highland air, signaling the arrival of Camilla's advance team, eager to prepare the grounds for her grand entrance. But the gates that William had personally seen locked would not yield to their keys, and the power dynamic that had defined the last 2 decades was about to be dismantled in full view of the world. To understand the intensity of this moment, one must look back 27 years to a time when a young, heartbroken mother stood in this very same master bedroom. Diana's hands had trembled as she packed her final suitcase, her sanctuary during the most tumultuous years of her marriage being stripped away piece by piece. The Highland estate had been her refuge, the one place where she felt she could breathe away from the suffocating gaze of the London press and the cold corridors of Buckingham Palace. Now her eldest son stood where she once stood, fueled by the memory of their final conversation. He could still hear her voice, barely a whisper, asking him to promise that when he had the power, he would not let them erase her completely. At 14, he had been too young to grasp the full weight of royal inheritance or the ruthless speed with which palaces could rewrite history to suit the needs of the present. But now, as the grandfather clock downstairs struck the quarter hour, the boy had become a man who understood exactly how to use the law as both a shield and a sword. He walked toward the library, where behind a row of leather-bound volumes of Scottish poetry lay a hidden compartment. His mother had shown him this secret space during their very last Highland summer together, a place where she kept her most precious, private possessions. The compartment stood empty now, a hollow reminder of everything that had been lost, but its existence served as the catalyst for William's current resolve. His phone buzzed with a text from his private secretary, informing him that the Queen Consort's motorcade was approaching the estate perimeter with an estimated arrival time of 15 minutes. His response was a single, clinical word: understood. He then turned his attention to the library's guest logs, flipping through 23 years of entries that documented the slow, methodical encroachment of Camilla into the family's private Highland life. Her handwriting appeared with increasing frequency after 2005, evolving from Mrs. Parker Bowles, weekend guest, to HRH the Duchess of Cornwall, and finally to the planned entry for this summer, HM the Queen Consort, extended residence. It was as if she intended to stay forever, weaving herself into the very fabric of the estate until the memory of Diana was nothing more than a fading shadow. However, William pulled out a much thicker ledger that had been hidden behind the guest books, the Highland Estate Trust documents, which had been updated the previous Tuesday by royal decree. The fine print of these documents revealed a legal reality that Camilla had apparently never bothered to investigate, a loophole written in 1701 that dictated the estate must pass directly to the heir apparent's children upon the current monarch's marriage to a divorced woman. This ancient clause, dormant for centuries, had been activated the very moment the crown was placed on Camilla's head, effectively making Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis the legal owners of the estate, with William acting as their trustee. Outside the walls of the study, the sound of screeching tires and slamming car doors shattered the Highland peace. Raised voices began to echo across the courtyard as Camilla's security detail discovered that their access codes were useless and the gates were impenetrable. Camilla's voice, usually so controlled and melodic for the public, carried through the air with a sharp edge of disbelief. She stood beside her Bentley, her manicured fingers gripping her phone like a weapon as she watched the iron bars of the gate remain stubbornly closed. Her security chief spoke in hushed, urgent tones into his radio, while her lady-in-waiting clutched a garment bag containing a dress intended for that evening's dinner, a dinner that would never happen. The call to King Charles was connected immediately, his voice sounding tired and strained over the speaker. He admitted that he had tried to warn her, but his words were met with her indignant retort about the months of planning she had invested in this retreat. The silence that followed was heavy with the rustling of official documents being reviewed in London, as Charles confirmed that the legal situation had indeed changed. William had invoked the succession trust clause, and the estate now belonged to his children. The color drained from Camilla's face as the realization hit her. All the renovations, the staff reassignments, and the carefully curated garden designs were now part of a property she no longer had any right to inhabit. Through the iron bars of the gate, she watched as William emerged from the front entrance of the house, walking slowly down the stone steps with his hands clasped behind his back. He wore no formal uniform or royal insignia, just simple dark trousers and a crisp white shirt, looking hauntingly like his mother in the final photographs taken of her. When Camilla attempted to use her practiced royal tone to suggest there had been some confusion about the access codes, William's expression remained an unreadable mask of stone. He clarified that there was no confusion. The trust documents were perfectly clear, and while she might have courtesy privileges as his father's wife, those did not extend to private family estates owned by the House of Wales. The drama escalated as the sound of approaching helicopters cut through the air, 3 aircraft circling the estate like mechanical vultures. William had ensured that the media was aware of the legal transition, and as the press began to set up their equipment along the perimeter road, Camilla realized that her private humiliation was about to become a global headline. Inside the estate's oak-paneled study, the atmosphere was even more suffocating. William faced a group of 5 men in identical gray suits, the palace machinery known as the Gray Men, who have quietly facilitated every royal transition for over half a century. They spoke of complications, media speculation, and the potential impact on the king's health if this were perceived as a family dispute. But William was unmoved, insisting that this was a matter of legal inheritance and historical correction, not a mere family spat. He pointed out that the 1701 clause superseded any courtesy arrangements, and while he agreed to reimburse the Duchy of Cornwall for Camilla's personal investments in the property, he had far more serious matters to discuss. He spread a collection of photographs, bank transfer records, and private correspondence across the mahogany table, documents from the 1990s that detailed a shocking institutional betrayal. These records showed how palace resources had been diverted to protect certain reputations during the Ferguson scandals, money that should have been used to support the Princess of Wales during her most vulnerable years. The senior equerry's face went pale as he realized that William had uncovered evidence of a coordinated effort to abandon Diana while quietly positioning Camilla as her eventual replacement. The tension reached a breaking point as William declared that the royal archives had been moved to Windsor and that the estate's historical records were being audited by independent historians to ensure the narrative of the 1990s was finally corrected. When a black sedan with diplomatic plates arrived at the gates, it signaled the arrival of King Charles himself, coming to witness the final act of this Shakespearean struggle. In the drawing room, a space that had hosted 3 centuries of royal history, William and Camilla sat across from each other for a conversation that would define their future relationship. The air was cold, the tea untouched, as Camilla accused William of destroying his father's happiness to settle a decades-old grudge. William's response was a clinical assessment of royal legacy. Diana's bloodline would continue the monarchy for generations, while Camilla's contribution would end with Charles. It was a brutal, honest truth that shattered what remained of Camilla's composure. As she argued that she had earned her place through 18 years of service and loyalty, William reminded her that marriage granted her courtesy, not ownership of his family's ancestral foundations. The arrival of King Charles in the drawing room brought a somber, weary energy to the proceedings. William didn't sit. He stood at the edge of the mahogany table, tapping a folder that contained the most damning evidence of all, records of back-channel financial transfers from the mid-1990s linked to Sarah Ferguson and the late Jeffrey Epstein. William revealed that funds intended for his mother's mental health initiatives had been redirected to manage the public images of individuals who had attended gatherings they should never have been near. He produced a handwritten memo from 1997 with Camilla's own initials, CPB, marking her as a point of contact for one of these transfers. The room held its breath as Charles walked to the window, staring out at the Highland grounds that had seen so much of his life's joy and sorrow. When he finally spoke, his voice was fractured, admitting that while he hadn't known the full extent of the redirected funds, he had known there were connections he should have examined more closely. He had been trying to protect the institution, but William countered that he had really been trying to protect himself. In a moment of profound symbolic significance, Charles turned to a writing desk and removed a small leather pouch containing the personal signet of the House of Wales, a ring passed to him by his father in 1969. He set it before William, offering his blessing for whatever decisions his son made regarding the estate, the trust, and the archives. He would not oppose the new order. As the grandfather clock struck 5, the process of reclaiming the house began in earnest. Long-serving staff members like Deja, Marcus, and Cornelius moved through the rooms with a quiet, somber efficiency, removing every trace of Camilla's brief tenure. Silk scarves were folded into monogram trunks, hand-painted rugs were rolled up to reveal the original 1889 Highland tartan beneath, and Diana's framed photograph was returned to its rightful place on the mantelpiece. The arrival of Damon Ashford, an independent historian, served as a silent witness to this restoration of history, ensuring that no further rewriting could occur. By early evening, the transition was complete. William sat at his grandfather's heavy black writing desk, reviewing the Highland Heritage Decree one final time. Every clause was a testament to the 6 weeks of meticulous planning he had undertaken with legal teams and constitutional experts. He signed his name in 3 clean strokes, followed by the witnesses, making the trust permanent and irreversible. He watched from the window as Camilla's convoy, laden with 17 pieces of matched ivory luggage, pulled away from the estate and disappeared into the Highland mist. The gates closed behind them, and for the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to the right people. As the last of the Highland light touched the ridges at 7:14 p.m., William stood on the hills where his mother once sought peace, looking out over an estate that was now safely in the hands of his children. The air smelled of heather and old rain, and as he messaged his wife, Catherine, that he would be home by Sunday, he felt a sense of peace that had long been missing. But the story was far from over. On his desk sat 3 more sealed files that had yet to be opened, promising even more revelations about the past. The Highland chapter had not merely closed. It had been rewritten in the ink of truth and justice, ensuring that the legacy of the House of Wales would never be erased. The ripple effects of this Highland showdown began to spread far beyond the estate's iron gates, as news of the legal maneuver reached the global stage. Royal correspondents and legal analysts scrambled to parse the implications of the 1701 Succession Trust Clause, a piece of legislation that many had considered a mere historical curiosity until William's decisive action. Within the palace, the atmosphere was described as one of stunned silence, with aides to the king and Queen Consort struggling to formulate a response to what was effectively a legal eviction of the nation's highest-ranking female royal. Sources close to the Prince of Wales emphasized that this was not a move born of impulsive anger, but a calculated effort to safeguard the future of the monarchy and honor a long-standing commitment to his mother's memory. The discovery of the financial documents linking the palace machinery to the redirection of charitable funds proved to be the most explosive element of the saga, threatening to reopen old wounds from the 1990s that the institution had spent decades trying to heal. Public opinion, as expected, was deeply divided, with some praising William for his loyalty and strength, while others expressed sympathy for King Charles, caught between his son's crusade for justice and his wife's position. As the days turned into weeks, the Highland estate began to hum with a different kind of energy. The staff, many of whom had served during Diana's time, reportedly felt a renewed sense of purpose under the new trusteeship. Plans were already being drawn up for the estate to host a series of mental health retreats and charitable events, directly honoring the work that Diana had been so passionate about before her life was cut short. This transformation of the property from a private retreat for the Queen Consort into a public-facing legacy project for the House of Wales was seen as a masterstroke of rebranding, positioning William and Catherine as the modern, compassionate face of the monarchy. Meanwhile, the grey men of the palace were forced to undergo a period of intense internal reflection, as William's refusal to play by the old rules signaled that the era of managing royal reputations at the expense of individual welfare was coming to an end. The 3 unopened files remaining on the writing desk became a symbol of the transparency that William intended to bring to the institution, a promise that the shadows of the past would no longer dictate the light of the future. In the quiet moments following the upheaval, the Prince of Wales found himself frequently returning to the library, the heart of the estate's history. He spent hours with Damon Ashford and Dr. Kezia Fontaine, meticulously documenting every piece of evidence they uncovered in the archives. It wasn't just about the money or the legal titles. It was about the fundamental human right to have one's story told accurately. The discovery of personal letters from Diana, hidden in the very back of the archive, provided a poignant connection to the woman who had started this entire journey. These letters spoke of her hopes for her sons and her belief that one day, the truth would prevail. William felt the weight of these words as he prepared to share them with his own children, ensuring that George, Charlotte, and Louis would grow up with a full and honest understanding of their grandmother's life and the legacy they were inheriting. The Highland estate was no longer just a collection of stone and heather. It was a living, breathing testament to the resilience of truth and the enduring power of a son's love. The broader implications for the British monarchy were profound. The activation of the 1701 clause set a precedent that could potentially affect other royal properties and inheritance structures, causing a flurry of activity within the Crown estate's legal departments. For King Charles, the situation presented an agonizing challenge to his authority, but his decision to offer his blessing to William's decree suggested a recognition that the future of the house lay with the next generation. Camilla's departure from the estate was handled with as much dignity as the circumstances allowed, but the public nature of the transition meant that her influence within the family's private properties had been significantly curtailed. The narrative of her triumphant ascent to Queen Consort had been complicated by this legal reality, reminding the world that in the world of royalty, history and bloodlines often carry more weight than contemporary titles. As autumn began to settle over the highlands, the estate took on a golden, reflective glow. The roses Camilla had planted were replaced with more traditional highland flora, and the sounds of laughter once again filled the rooms as William and his family made their first official visit as trustees. The children explored the secret compartments and the rolling hills with the same curiosity their father had shown decades earlier, a new generation claiming their place in a story that had almost been lost to time. William stood on the same ridge where his mother had once found solace, watching the sunset with a sense of completion. He had kept his promise, he had not let them erase her. The truth had found its way home, and in doing so it had paved the way for a more honest and transparent monarchy. The Highland chapter was indeed just beginning, but it was being written on a clean slate, free from the distortions of the past, and grounded in the enduring strength of a legacy reclaimed. The story of the Highland inheritance became a cornerstone of the new era of the House of Wales, a narrative of justice and reclamation that resonated with people around the world. It served as a reminder that even the most powerful institutions are subject to the weight of history and the moral imperatives of those who lead them. For William, the estate was now more than a summer retreat. It was a sanctuary of truth, a place where the memory of his mother could finally rest in peace, honored not just in whispers, but in the very laws and deeds that governed the land. The 3 sealed files would eventually be opened, and more truths would come to light. But for now, the silence of the Highlands was no longer heavy with secrets. It was filled with the promise of a future built on the solid foundation of the past. The gates of the estate remained closed to those who would rewrite history, but they stood wide open for the family who had fought so hard to bring the truth home. In the end, the Highland saga was a masterclass in the quiet strength of a son honoring his mother, a story of how patience, truth, and legal precision can overcome even the most entrenched of palace intrigues, ensuring that the light of the House of Wales would shine brightly for generations to come. The ultimate legacy of this event was a shift in how the royal family managed its private and public identities. No longer would the internal politics of the palace be allowed to overshadow the legal rights and moral responsibilities of the heirs. The Highland estate became a model for how royal properties could be used to benefit the public while maintaining their historical significance. The trust established by William ensured that the estate would remain a permanent asset for his children, protected from the shifting winds of royal marriages and political alliances. As the world watched the House of Wales flourish, it became clear that the events of that Tuesday in the Highlands had changed everything. The prince had not just reclaimed a house, he had reclaimed the narrative of his family, ensuring that the voice of his mother would continue to be heard, loud and clear, in the halls of power and the hearts of the people. The story of the Highland Inheritance Decree remains a powerful reminder that justice, though it may take decades, always finds its way home, and that some legacies are simply too important to ever be erased. As the years pass and the events of that dramatic summer fade into the broader tapestry of royal history, the image of William standing alone on the Highland Ridge remains a potent symbol of a new kind of kingship. It is a kingship defined not by the acquisition of titles or the redecoration of palaces, but by the protection of truth and the honoring of those who came before. The Highland estate stands as a permanent monument to this philosophy, its stone walls and ancient glens reflecting the enduring strength of a family that refused to let its history be rewritten. The lessons learned during those intense weeks of legal and emotional struggle continue to guide the Prince of Wales as he prepares for his future role, a reminder that the greatest power a monarch can wield is the power of the truth. And so, the Highland chapter remains open, a source of inspiration for all who believe that the past should be honored, the present should be transparent, and the future should be built on the unshakable foundation of a legacy reclaimed in the name of love and justice.